Garth Brooks has sold out concerts and collected platinum plaques for decades now. We all know what a legendary figure he is in the history of country music. He's achieved pretty much everything a man can achieve in this day and age, including more than his fair share of bragging rights. But today I'm gonna give Garth credit for something that even his most die-hard fans might not believe. That achievement, well, the perfect song. Heck, what even makes a song perfect, you might say? Could such a thing even exist? Today's video is about one very special tune by one very special artist, and the reasons why it very well might be an absolutely perfect song. Along the way, we'll visit such exotic locales as Nashville, Kansas, and East Germany, learning just why the song had the impact that it did and why it should never have existed. Before we begin, make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you don't mind, and subscribe to the channel to show support for Garth and us. Are you ready? Well, let's go down to the Oasis and find out.
What happened?
Teamwork makes the dream work. With some songs, the vocal performance is so good that it stuns listeners into silence. But while Garth certainly has some pipes on him, his music is good for a different reason. It's so catchy and relatable that you can't help but sing along. And Friends in Low Places is no exception. In fact, there's a secret to this song you might not have noticed, and it plays a huge role in making it a classic. When Garth Brooks moved to Nashville, he wasn't exactly the wealthy globe hopper that he is today. To support his blossoming career and pay rent, he had to work a day job selling cowboy boots. And that income didn't earn him very fancy digs. He and his wife had to live in a very tiny home, with 5 guys, 2 wives, a dog, and a cat. It sure sounds like a chaotic place to begin a career. But that's the thing about country music. The genre thrives from close collaborations and friendship. Now, this song doesn't sound like it was engineered in a lab like so many of today's pop songs. It came out of an organic and authentic environment. When Garth recorded the song, he was adamant that it wouldn't just sound good. It would have an authentic message that would be reflected in every aspect of the track. Now, this had some subtle effects. For example, the classic intro of the song was improvised by the studio guitarist. But Garth also decided to use his home environment to the song's advantage. So he enlisted his wife, as well as the other musicians and collaborators. All helped sing along to the chorus on the outro. And they didn't just simulate a good time. No, this gang was actually partying in the studio. At one point in the song, you can hear the greatest sound of all time, a beer can opening. And yeah, it might not be the most experimental technique in music history. Years later, Red Solo Cup would sell a gazillion downloads with a similar trick. And yes, the Beatles did it with Yellow Submarine. But on Friends in Low Places, this gimmick works so well because it supports the theme of the song. That of friendship and revelry being a positive force, even in tough conditions. And he even used real friends and lovers to sell it. Oasis. One of my favorite lines in Friends in Low Places is this. Yeah, I'm not big on social graces. Think I'll slip down to the Oasis. Oh, I've got friends in low places. Sure, they're pretty simple, but they perfectly encapsulate the image that Garth is painting in the song. The bar he's talking about is a rundown looking place, but it's also a refreshing and healing one, hence the metaphor, the Oasis. But this line is more than just wordplay. It turns out that the Oasis was actually the name of a real bar. No, not in Nashville, but in Kansas. And the guy who was playing guitar on that track was from Kansas, not too far away from where Garth was from. Unfortunately, there's not much record of the real-life bar, so Garth fans can't make that pilgrimage out to the Midwest to celebrate their favorite track. We can, however, imagine the bar, no doubt a real down-home joint. And just like the outro dripped with authenticity of people, the song didn't have to invent an imaginary place where everything is perfect. Paradise is available to us, the song says. It just comes in the form of friendship and beer, of course. Any one of us can slip down to the Oasis, just like Garth in the song, and grab a cold one. But while the Oasis is only accessible metaphorically, Garth fans will soon have access to a real-world place, where the whiskey drowns and the blues chases the blues away. That's because Garth is opening up a 3-level bar and performance honky-tonk, which is not coincidentally called Friends in Low Places. Now, Garth has described it as, quote, the Chick-fil-A of honky-tonks. So I guess they're closed on Sundays. I'm not sure what that means. It almost didn't happen. Friends in Low Places is one of those songs that sounds like God willed it into existence for just one person to sing. But believe it or not, Garth was never meant to perform this classic track. It was only by a mountain of good luck and quite a bit of trust that he had the opportunity to sing it. Like I mentioned earlier, Garth wasn't exactly rolling in it at the beginning of his career. He was working day after day at the boot store, where he happened to meet 2 songwriters, Bud Lee and Dwayne Blackwell. The 2 more accomplished musicians decided to help out the younger singer and gave him some work recording demos of their songs so that other artists could eventually record it. Well, during one of those sessions, Garth finally recorded one of their songs, Friends in Low Places. Afterwards, all 3 of the musicians knew there was something special about the song, and Bud and Dwayne were excited to make it a hit with a more established recording artist. But the younger Garth had a feeling about the song. He knew that it was more than just an earworm. And in the hands of a talent like him, he knew it could become a modern classic. So he asked them to hold on to it and wait until Garth would get a chance to record it. Bud and Dwayne had very little reason to grant this request, mind you. Garth was basically a nobody, and the song was quite obviously special. But here's the thing about country music, it's different than other genres of music. Feuds are far and few between, and people treat the business more like a collaborative venture than a vehicle for narcissism. While this kind of explains their decision, even more importantly is that these accomplished musicians saw themselves in young Garth, and also saw that there was something very special about this kid. So they granted him his wish, and they held off until Garth could record the tune. Well, that's the story Garth tells, at least. But here's the kicker. Well, they didn't.
Oh no.
2 different singers actually recorded versions of the song before Garth did. David Chamberlain and Mark Chestnut. And we don't know if Garth didn't know or he didn't care, but he recorded the song for his own album, which is quite a bold move for an up-and-coming artist. But this just proves that it's more than just the lyrics and the chords. Because Garth Brooks provided that song with a special something to make it resonate in the hearts of millions. The final case. To me, there are 3 things that every song needs to have in order to be a classic, let alone a perfect song. First, it needs to be written well with authenticity. Check. The song needs to be recorded well and in a way that speaks to the content of the lyrics and music. Check. But the final component is outside of the writer's and performer's control. To find that third component, let's hop in a time machine and go back to 1990. Boy, it was a chaotic year, but one in which America really shined. Scientists made massive leaps, and the human genome was mapped. East and West Germany were reunited. Heck, the Hubble Space Telescope was launched, birthing that famous image of Earth. Truly, it was a banner year for freedom and collaboration. So in a year where America was justifying its exceptional place in the world, it makes sense that country music was really enjoying a moment in the sun. But Americans were also learning some tough lessons. Despite all these advancements, the economy wasn't doing so hot. And no matter how crazy the headlines were, life went on like normal for much of the country. Hearts were broken, songs were sung, and beer kept flowing. And in an environment like that, it's no surprise that Friends in Low Places enjoyed the success it did. while pop stars were singing about star-crossed lovers and heartbreak that lasted for eternity. My guy Garth was singing about a more down-to-earth life. You had to deal with heartbreak, but the real beauty was in getting up day after day and dealing with it like a man or a woman. The simple story of friends in low places, of making a scene at a fancy party and fleeing to a bar where your real friends are. Well, that just hit home for so many Americans who just wanted to be reassured that life would still go on like normal in the face of such drastic changes. And that, more than any chord, lyric, or beer can, is the reason why I believe Friends in Low Places is truly a perfect song. But don't take my word for it. Get in the comments and tell us what you think. Do you agree Friends in Low Places is a perfect song? Or is it just another radio tune by Garth Brooks? Do you have another entry for a perfect song? Let us know in the comments. Is this even Garth Brooks' best song? We want to know from you. Before you head back to the present, please give this video a thumbs up to show support. Subscribe to our channel and come back often so we can keep telling you
What happened?